welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Very excited about today's episode because we're doing another episode in our series of, intermittent episodes we've done where we highlight a specific program or offering that a school could offer outside of their normal lesson program. And those episodes in the past, they've been bite-sized, they've been packed full of value and information, and that sort of thing. We've gotten a lot of good feedback about them. A few that I'm talking about are like the date night episode. We did an episode on big music games, just these snapshots into offerings that a school can have that are a little bit non-traditional. And we've also had other people on who've talked about unique things that they're doing inside of their school. Today will be no different. And for those who have followed Grow for a long time, you might be somewhat aware of this program that I'm about to talk about because for many, many years, I talked about it in conjunction with my group lesson program, trainings that I've done in the past and am currently doing. And it's the Book Blast that is kind of a take on my multi-level group model, a multi-level model that I pioneered nearly a decade ago now. And so we're going to turn the tables because the last time we did this, or the last couple times we did this, we did the date night episode. I was asking Nate a bunch of questions. Today, Nate's going to ask me a bunch of questions because this is a program that I have used in my own studio and also teach in a much more in-depth way in one of my group lesson trainings, which if you have interest about that, just, reach out to me in some way. You can go to the contact page on growyourmusicstudio.com. You can email me, daniel@growyourmusicstudio.com. You can hit me on socials. You can figure it out some way. You're smart people. Anyway, so Nate, I want to kick it over to you because I know you have some questions to ask me. You're a curious guy, so let's hear it.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward, and I've heard you talk before, Daniel, about the Book Blast and the mini camps, but just for our listeners' benefit, for those of them that are like maybe just joining the pod for the first time, can you give us a quick what exactly was the Book Blast and when during the school year did you do it? Just so we know.
Yeah, the Book Blast originated as a kind of summer camp idea, but it was a scaled down version. I think when we think of music camp for the summer, we think of these massive programs. We think of all these logistical preparations that need to be made. I didn't want to do that. I was already doing that with the early version of Piano Express in the 2000s. I didn't want to do that again here. A lot of times, especially when I was still single, I would travel out to Washington, D.C. and run the Book Blast camps with my business partner, Greg. When I came home, I wanted something to do that could help me to avoid some of those summer doldrums of lowered income.
Yep.
But what ended up happening was I began to use that Book Blast structure year round. And I will just jump in here and say that this is not intended to be a quote unquote summer camp episode. We usually do those during the spring or late winter, February. The reason I'm bringing up this program right now is because it is something that I did year round, and it is a structure that folks could use. It's a little more low key, a little less impact on how much time and marketing you have to do it. And so that's where it originated. It originated as a summer camp idea, but then I began to use that structure throughout the year. I think there was a second half to the question too, but I don't know if I answered it yet.
Yeah, just give us the specifics. So the Book Blast, how long did it last?
Sure.
How long would a student be in your studio? Just give us a quick bullets on exactly the what.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I would typically run the Book Blast from Monday to Thursday. Some years I'd run them Monday to Friday and I'd charge more because I do all 5 days. But a lot of times during the summer, if I could avoid it, I wouldn't schedule any lessons on Friday. And so if that particular summer I didn't have lessons on Friday, I would only do a 4-day blast and I would do them for 2.5 hours instead of 2. And that kind of answers another part of the question. I would start them at 9:30 in the morning. They would end at 11:30. If I did a 4-day version of the camp, they'd start at 9:30, they'd end at 12. During that time, I would utilize my multi-level group model and I would bring in kids. Most of the time, it was students who were already in my studio that, wanted to have something for their child to do during a break period. And so I would have kids of all ability levels. Sometimes I would have beginners mixed in with, well-established students who'd been taken from me for a couple of years. And that really wouldn't impact the curriculum, as it were, because there was no curriculum. I was just blasting kids through their books. And I used at the time the Faber series, although this model could work with any method, including Piano Express, which is now the kind of current way that I recommend that people do camps. But yeah, that's kind of the structure of it, the length of it. They were essentially getting in studio, they were getting about 2 months worth of lessons time in 1 week. So if you add up the actual number of hours they were in class about 8 hours, which is roughly equivalent to 2 months worth of 1 hour weekly group lessons. And so I charged about what I would charge for 2 months worth of group lessons. There were prizes. Yeah, there were prizes, and kids could earn super bucks for passing songs, which was the only time of the year that I gave incentives for learning music. I'm a big believer in Alfie Kohn's concept of the punishment of rewards. How actually rewards or awards actually demotivate children. Controversial take, but just go read Alfie Kohn's book. But so this was the only time during the year that I kind of gave rewards for performance. So I think those were all the basic details.
Yeah. And before I jump in, I've got like 5 more questions for you. I want to frame it for our listeners here for a moment, because this is one of those episodes that I would listen to and trigger ideas for my own studio, for my own school, for Brooklyn Music Factory. I would think, okay, Book Blast. Here's how Daniel priced it. Here's how many hours it was. What would work for my community? Would it be 2 hours? Would it be 3 hours? Maybe I want to do all day. Is moving fast through a book actually the definition of success in my type of, offering like this? So if you're listening and you're thinking like, oh, I'm just going to, Xerox Daniel's Book Blast, sure, you can just go ahead and grab that if it aligns with your program and your purpose and it sounds great. 100% steal it and launch it and do it, right? But I'd love for our listeners, Daniel, to come away with every nugget that you share and be like, that's pretty awesome. What am I inspired to do with that information? Right? You know what I mean? It's like a design your own program app.
Yeah.
So,
and okay. I will say to that point that obviously we can't get into the nitty gritty of all the wisdom and rules that I had for this, not rules for the kids, but rules for the teacher, like how to run this successfully.
Right.
And this is going to be more of a high level survey. But what I will say is that for the hundreds of studios that I've taught this model, I have seen people take it, run with it, make it their own. So yeah, it kind of fits into the general ethos that I've had around Grow Your Music Studio for about a decade, which is let me give you some tools and then you go run with those tools and we'll wish you luck. The only exception to that rule in terms of projects that I've done kind of in this public sphere in our industry is grouplessons.com Piano Express, which is a little bit more of a rigid system. That's kind of the only project in which I'm involved that departs from that model. But with the Book Blast, it definitely is here's a great tool. Here's a bunch of best practices. Now go and be successful and profitable.
Nice. Yeah. We wish you abundance.
Yes.
Okay. So you sort of touched for a second. You said the summer doldrums, or I can't remember exactly the language you used, but why did you start doing this in the first place? Like, just give us a couple, 2 or 3 main motivations for you so that if other studio owners are listening and they're thinking, oh, this overlaps with some of my issues or pain points right now as an owner. I'm just curious.
Yeah. The initial motivation I have talked about in previous episodes. I won't dwell on that one too much, only to say that this was to give parents an alternative to doing lessons through the entire summer. If parents told me, oh, I don't want, I think we're going to take the summer off, I would say, if you want to be on my schedule in the fall, then one of the weeks you are in town, you need to take a Book Blast camp. And most families would. That's one main motivation. Another motivation was that after I did some of these, I began to see like what a burst of energy it gave the kids, which led to a development. Well, this will be the third point I make. but I'm going to name check it here just for a second. That led to the development of why I started doing them year round. But to dwell on 2 for just a second, when kids would be immersed like they were in a language school in the Book Blast environment, and the idea was, hey, you come here, you're with me for a couple hours, we're going to practice, you're going to get prizes, we're going to play games. This is going to be a more social environment than Daniel's normal, rigid boot camp style of group lessons.
Right.
Right. Kids would, they knew that they would pass entire songs here during the week, not have to practice at home, and not necessarily have to practice those songs ever again. There was a little performance at the end of the week where they were getting one particular song ready to play for all the kids on the last day. So there was a little bit of, pressure there, like that sort of thing. If there was a harder song that they encountered during the week, I wouldn't just force them to sit there and just practice that for an hour. We'd break it up over the days to make it feel more like a regular practice session, which leads me into another motivation, which was I wanted to supervise the child's practice for an entire week and just see what their practice habits were like, and even model for them what a week at home of practice should be. And that actually became part of what I was teaching them during the week, which wouldn't make sense to teach in a week-to-week lesson. Like there was more of a practicality to teaching it when I could see them every single day,
Yeah.
And then I just say, the final one was that what led me to start doing it year round was I began to see the benefits of getting the kids out of the doldrums of normal, every week kind of practice. And so I had, and I tell the story in my training on this, which again, if you want to talk to me about that training, just reach out. But I tell a story about one particular girl. She was a very sporty girl. She was in 3rd, 4th grade, something like that, so around 9, 10 years old. And I could just tell, I could feel month by month, her interest in piano was just waning.
Right.
She wasn't practicing at home. Her mom, there was beginning to be that hand wringing of the mom, like, oh, like, what do we do? How do I get her to practice more? Like this sort of thing. And I could just tell they were going to be quitting imminently. And I had noticed this pattern of kids like having this burst of energy after a Book Blast week, and then for months afterwards practicing way more.
Higher sustained practice.
Yes.
So
that's what I was referring to. Like this gave kids a burst of energy. I would see their practice times goes up, and this kind of afterglow effect happened for months after they attended one of these. Not kidding. Not over exaggerating here. It was very common. And so they had never wanted to participate in this because why would the mom enroll her girl in something that she was losing interest in? And so I went to the mom and I told her about this opportunity. And I said, I recommend that M comes to this. And the mom expressed the concern. And I said, this is what I've seen. Your mileage may vary, but I know you're wanting her to like find passion in this. And that's why you've kept her in it, even past when you thought you should have. So let's just try it. That girl ended up taking like 2 more years from me after that. And every Book Blast I offered throughout the school year, they were at every one for like the next year and a half. That completely changed her trajectory, and she ended up becoming quite good. And then she got into middle school, and then she quit. Yeah.
Totally.
But her lasting impression was when she stopped, it was because she was busy. It wasn't because she'd lost interest. When she stopped, it wasn't because she hated piano. It wasn't because there was no joy in it. We all know the pain of a child leaving music lessons and they're just over it and probably have a bad taste in their mouth for a good portion of their life after that. That is not how she ended. And so I really enjoy that was her experience. We don't have to have every kid become the next Evgeny Kasin or the next Marta Argerich for it to be considered success,
Right. Yeah. What's awesome listening to you talk about it is like, not once did you mention revenue, which is fascinating. I thought one of your motivations would be, well, I was looking to bump up my summer revenue. And instead you said improved retention. In other words, you want a spot with Daniel, you got to sign up for at least 1 Book Blast this summer. So, and then, which is amazing. Great strategy. The second motivation I heard you say was that it gave you an opportunity to basically learn from watching your students. Like it was essentially like a teacher level up opportunity for you because you got 8 hours with these kids. And then finally, it gave you an opportunity to model for them what practice actually looked like. And you know what's interesting, dude? When I was listening to you tell that story, I was just thinking of how many hours we spend trying to explain practice routines to parents. And you were saving like dozens of hours by instead just have modeling a practice routine for your students and letting them then go home and do with that information what they would, but hopefully changing their habits ever so slightly, right? And so you actually save this like massive time suck that we have as studio owners around trying to explain, to a parent what's really experiential practical knowledge.
Yeah.
Is there, I have one more follow up and then I'm going to question number 2 because we got 5 and this is a tight app. Were you surprised by anything in the first couple of years? Like observing your students, were you surprised by any element of developing these book blasts or?
Okay. I have an answer to that. I have an answer to that, but before I answer that, I do just want to address one thing you said there. Let's not go giving me philanthropic awards, okay? Because money was a motivation, and it's just funny that I have to say this because I think there's a deeper principle at play here. We've had my business partner Greg on before, and I think he's talked about like the monastic vow of poverty that all music teachers end up having to take.
We're not taking that.
Right, we're not taking that. Okay. But I will say that if you're good at something, you should be paid at it. And if you're good at something, people will offer to pay you for it. You won't even have to ask really necessarily. I mean, you do have to ask, but I think you know the point that I'm saying. Like it won't feel like it. So it followed a pattern in my career of me following my nerdiness, my intellectual curiosity, me just, I have a phrase that, I love a good quote, but I've got a quote that I kind of live by, but I got this one for myself. I didn't get this from someone else. But the idea of always happy, never content. Always happy, never content. I was never content with how things were. If there was even the slightest annoyance or smallest problem, I could not sleep until I'd solved it. And so a lot of what I ended up developing in my own studio that just made things so good was just me deeply enjoying my career, being happy about things, but also not being content at any given, in the micro, wanting to solve problems. And so by solving these problems, I solve money problems, I solve retention problems, I solve practice problems, I solve career problems. And I was trying to solve all those problems simultaneously with the things that I was doing in the studio. So yes, I did solve all those other problems, but economics were maybe the underlying driver for a lot of what I did. It's just that I never did anything solely for the money. I did it because I also enjoyed it. And I did it also because I really was wanting to look out for the kids as best as I could. It's just, I was always trying to find solutions that served everyone, not just myself.
Well, and I think, I don't know if you feel this way in your life as an entrepreneur, but I feel like essentially what we are problem solvers.
Yeah.
At the core. And then if you couple that with kind of doing enough of the deep work to get to know yourself where you feel really authentic. And at that chapter of your life, you felt really authentic in the studio as a teacher, and so you were sort of like coupling that problem solving with, just a being that felt, just, you weren't straying from who you were and what energized you at the time.
This episode is sponsored by grouplessons.com. If you're looking for a group piano method that is easy to implement in your studio or school, look no farther than Piano Express from grouplessons.com. Because unlike most group piano methods, Piano Express allows students to make individual progress within the context of a larger group. And because of the at-home practice tools and gamified curriculum, students using the Piano Express method make faster progress than the average method book student. And that helps students feel excited, accomplished, and motivated to learn new music. Also, the system is really adaptable. We've got teachers using the system in their home studios, and we have many large commercial studios running our 3-room model that allows you to see up to 24 students per hour with just 2 teachers. So if you'd like to learn more about Piano Express, navigate to grouplessons.com and sign up for a free demo. You'll get to look at the method, our app and teacher guides, And we'll even give you a sneak peek of our implementation plan that has helped hundreds of studios start their group program in just a few weeks.
Okay, moving on. Anything else you want to add to how you developed it? Because you've given us some nice details about what it is and sort of the structure somewhat. And I know we can't get into the weeds, but you want to add anything about how one would develop their own ideas, or how, just by sharing how you developed yours?
Yeah, sure can. I feel like I put another one of your questions on pause, but then didn't come back to it. Was there another question I didn't answer just a second ago?
No, you did great. What was your initial motivation? And I feel like you gave us a great list of motivations. Oh no, I asked you if you were surprised by something.
Yes.
And then sorry.
Good for you. Good for you. Because I totally forgot.
Dude, but I was so into your response about sort of the why of the moment.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good.
Okay, surprise.
What surprised you, if anything?
Yeah, I think the thing that surprised me, I already mentioned, so I won't dwell on it too long. But I think the thing that surprised me was that I was doing this, for economic reasons. I was doing this to make sure that kids just didn't lose their progress in the summer. I was doing this, for a variety of reasons. I think the thing that surprised me was that afterglow effect I described earlier. I did not expect this for these kids to get on fire for music afterwards. And then as they attended more of them, they began to look forward to them, because I said this at the outset of the episode, but I actually haven't addressed it yet. This started as a summer camp thing, but then I started doing them on fall break, Christmas break, and spring break. Yeah, and if I had enough enrollment, I would do one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And then I would go into my afternoon lessons in the afternoon. And I even sometimes had situations where parents would enroll their kids in one, and then they would still, during the summer, they would still do lessons all during the month. Or I had situations where I just assumed the kid would only come to the camp. And let's say that kid's lesson was normally on Wednesday. I would get an email from the parent being like, hey, they're asking to come to lesson this afternoon. Is that okay? And I just assumed, they're getting too much of this already. Like, why would they want to come? They were just so energized by it. That's the thing that really, really surprised me, was when, I planned all this out. I was very meticulous. I kept it simple like I like to do, but I put a lot of thought into it. And then I had this experience. And so then I had even more motivation to market it, because because it wasn't just about the money. It was like, man, look at these kids. They came to this a month ago, and their practice times are still way, way up. They're learning more pages per week than they were prior to the camp. Let's get every kid into this. Yeah. And long story short, the other surprise I'll mention, then I'll kick it back to you because I know you had that other question, was that this was the ultimate marketing. I'm not joking when I say this. I had multiple parents every year email me in February and March and saying, hey, are you running any of those book blasts this summer? And I would email them back, be like, yeah, you can pre-register now. And also, I'm doing one in spring break at the end of March, so you don't have to wait for summer if you don't want to. And I never had problems selling these out, which I just want to say, I have to kick this in here because I hear this every single year. We do these summer camp episodes, or people think they need to run summer camp in their school, or they need to run a spring break camp or something like that. They go to do it. Their enrollment isn't great. Oh, I should have marketed it harder. And I said, hey, first year that I did it was terrible too. I was like pulling teeth to fill up even one camp instance, let alone many. And this was after Greg and I in the 2000s. So I was doing this in the 2010s. This is after Greg and I in the 2000s were filling like 9 to 12 camp weeks a summer with 24 kids. So it wasn't like I didn't know how to get people into camp. It's just that there has to be this momentum. And I feel like a lot of people, they come to us, they ask, how do I get my camp weeks full this summer? It's their first year doing it. And I warn everyone, look, no matter how hard you market this, it's still going to be better in year 3 than it is in year 1. Yes. You can actually maybe market less in year 3 than in year 1 and still do better, because what ends up happening is you get patrons, you get families that really enjoy that experience. If you make the product really, really good, whether it's a book blast or summer camp or whatever program, you get parents that they get addicted to it. And then, like I had, they actually start inviting their friends, and they tell their friends about it. Oh yeah. Oh no. Macy can't come over to that, to pool day this week because she's in book blast camp, or she's in a piano camp. Oh, tell me about the piano camp. Oh, we love it. That sort of thing.
I want to just highlight a couple things from what surprised you. Number one, for our listeners that are where the wheels are just turning, because hopefully they are right now, they should absolutely be turning and going like, what can I do in my studio, in my academy, in my school? Number one, understand that you're going to do the best you can with the information you have, and you'll still be surprised by ways that you're benefiting your students and your community. And you do such a good job of this, Daniel, of just saying over and over how much we need to be listening and observing to what parents are actually saying, what students are actually saying about the thing we're offering. Right. So when you said you were surprised by how energized they were in the afterglow, I friggin' love that, because I bet you there's no listener right now that wouldn't just love to have students come in for a shot in the arm and then just all of a sudden come back and be killing it in their weekly lessons. The second thing, which is you're saying here, Daniel, is that developing a product, no matter what product it is you're adding to your product suite, takes time. And so, like you said, allow it to be only okay in the first year. I don't mean that you're not saying don't make it the best possible experience you can. You're saying allow enrollment to be wherever it needs to be in year one. But with those really amazing experiences, you get that referral network going that you're talking about. You can ask for those Google reviews, even from 4 families, if that's all you got in the first year. So, by the way, this doesn't pertain only to our seasonal products, like what we're talking about, the Book Blast doing. It pertains to your after-school products too, right? So if you're going to offer a new group lesson program, if you're going to offer a new songwriting program, whatever it is, you have to allow it time. You got to get it really strong enough so that referral network starts going. Okay, so back to you. You definitely shared some of this already, but is there anything you'd want to add around what purpose or need that it served your studio that wasn't already being fulfilled?
Sure. Okay. So I will say, and again, right before I answer your question, so don't forget the question, I do want to make one more comment. That patronage I described, that excitement, reminds me of a quote that I say maybe every 10 to 20 episodes of this podcast. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time about business. It's from Naval Ravikant. You're doing sales because you failed at marketing, and you're doing marketing because you failed at product.
Yeah, that's a good one.
For all the talk, if you go look at our episode guide, which if you want our episode guide so you can see all of our episodes categorized by topic, just go to GrowyMusicStudio.com/7FMS, and the episode guide is right there. It's a really great resource. I've already gotten tons of just excited comments about it. But if you go and look at our marketing category, that is longer than any other topic or category on there. And I know I kind of got a reputation as the marketing and business guy when I first kind of came onto the scene. But I think the thing that people need to understand is that the marketing worked because the product was so good. I believed in it. That belief comes through in 1,000 subconscious ways. And my confidence and my ability to sell it, even when I wasn't that great at sales, just oozed out of me. And parents could feel that. Because deep down, for as much time as I put into the marketing and learning marketing and that sort of thing, I put way more time into thinking about how to make the kids better. It was what I was obsessed with. Because I only market a few hours a week. I had to be in lessons 20 hours a week, teaching 100 kids in groups. And so for me, as I was in my teaching room, I would just get so annoyed when, here's another kid that can't do dotted half notes. I've got to find a way to teach this that 99.999% of kids will get. And I would just obsess over these things. And so as I made the kids better and as I took responsibility for their results in a healthy way, the product got better and it made the marketing so much easier. And the same was true of the Book Blast. The Book Blast structure was very, very simple. But how to get results with them, that was what made parents come back, not because it was flashy. Because my marketing training has tons of email templates for how to introduce us to families, how to sell them on it or whatever. But at the end of the day, if the kids go and at the end of the week, they didn't learn a whole lot, they're complaining, they were bored, you're not going to get that patronage. It isn't built in. You have to earn it. And that's why I have a
Yeah.
training on it, not just an idea for the structure itself.
What occurs to me when you say you're obsessed with getting results, Daniel, is this notion that as ideators, entrepreneurs constantly thinking about the next thing we can offer or the next thing we can grow. I think it's really important to push pause on that periodically and ask yourself, where are you really obsessing? Like, what problems do you actually really want to solve? And listening to you talk about this, like, you're getting microscopic in your thoughts. You're like, it's the dotted quarter note. That's what I want to solve this year, And like, so often we think that we want to dig a bunch of shallow holes. Like, I'm interested in this week. I'm interested in that this week. I'm interested in that next week. And it's just like entirely not the right approach. That Naval quote you share is so powerful because when he says you've got a product problem, it's because the hole is way too shallow. You haven't dug nearly deep enough into whatever it is that's your one product that you really want to develop. So I appreciate that addition. It just gets me to think, even in my own world, of like, because I'm a creative, I'm always like, what could be next? What could I do after this? And I always have to like discipline myself in any given week to be like, stay with the thing, like stay with the game development, because that's the thing you're really thinking about all the time. Is like, and so I just appreciate that because it's a needed reminder, I think, for all of our listeners. I'm guessing. It's a needed reminder for me, Daniel. So
the other issue beyond the shallow hole thing is just, you asked such a great question there. What are you getting obsessed about? Because where your focus is, you're going to get a lot more of what you're focused on. And if you're focused, totally. And so I think some people just need to develop the ability to have an obsession. That's kind of my observation, especially after a couple of years recently of a lot more coaching and consulting and working with more clients than I ever had in the late 2010s. I think people need to develop that capacity to go deep and to just obsess over particular things for a certain period of time, thoroughly solve it, then continue to move on to another obsession.
And trust the obsession.
Yeah. Another great.
Trust it. Go ahead.
Another great Naval quote. Let me pull this up. Is oh boy, hang tight. I'm going to read it. The universe is rigged in such a way that if you just want one thing and you focus on that, you will get it. But everything else, you've got to let go. It's true. Yeah. It's really true.
Okay, I'm moving on here to my next question. Is that cool, Daniel?
I know. I'm going to drag us down with a bunch of quotes.
No, I love that. I love the quotes. I love when you're bringing in your quote folder. Okay, how about any roadblocks you ran into? I mean, you shared one, which is like you had to develop patience around filling the thing or enrolling the thing, which is normal for any new product. But were there any other roadblocks that hit you where you were just like, wait, I wasn't expecting this?
I can't really think of one. Maybe the only thing that was a problem when I was doing these was the days got really long. I'd do like 9:30 to 11:30 or 9:30 to 12. I'd take a lunch break. If it was during the summer, I would often have lessons starting right at 1. So
long day.
I know it sounds like all music teachers sound like prima donnas. Oh, I can't teach more than like 4 hours in a day. I mean, it is emotionally exhausting work, but one summer I was such an idiot. I scheduled, I'm not kidding, 7 groups on a Monday, and I would do a book blast camp the first day of it, which took more energy than the remaining days in the morning. So I'd go 9:30 to 11:30, and then I had, I think, like 12:30 to 8:30 at night. It was brutal.
Yeah. No, that's
I never made that mistake ever again. I was in my late 20s at the time, though.
Well, what's interesting about that is that oftentimes we feel like because we're so obsessed over our businesses that we can go forever. We're just like, we work into the night. We start burning the candle bright well after dinner. And then we wonder why we're sort of so tired, or why we might not even actually be showing up at the level that we know we're capable of. So even like, there's just no way, dude, you can teach 9:30 to 11:30 a.m., have a 1 hour lunch, and then expect that 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. group class to get the best version of Daniel. It's just not, but I would say that's a normal rookie mistake, honestly, in the early years, where you're like, I'm a superhero, especially if you're like 20 something.
It honestly was just lack of foresight, and it wasn't like that the entire summer. But I will tell you, part of the reason I did that was I had a 4-day weekend that summer. I only taught Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because I stacked all these groups the first couple days of the week, and then I had Thursday to Sunday off,
which might have made it actually workable.
But boy, I dreaded Sunday night.
Right, you had okay, I'm moving on. So anyways, that one roadblock that I hear from you is just like, be really mindful about what you can actually pull off, and also build team, honestly, build team around it. Like
right.
When we did our date night episode, which was a similar structure to this one, I was never showing up to run a date night on a Friday night. I knew better than to know that I couldn't pull off that plus a whole day of work on Friday. So, okay. So let's talk about just the results you saw. You talked about the results from the students, which is amazing. You want to just maybe zero in a little bit on the business results you saw and maybe how it benefited your studio over those 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think I stole all my thunder with kind of my big long explanation at the beginning of the episode, because I did mention these earlier, but just to highlight them again. Oftentimes summers were my best revenue months of the year.
Amazing.
When I would run them during breaks, I would run them in the same structure, because I would do like 4 days or 5 days. And oftentimes the people who came to them were ones who weren't leaving for fall break or Christmas break or, spring break.
Right.
So it kept me busy during these break weeks when historically, some people would be away, and I'd, restructure groups and things like that to just minimize the impact of my own schedule. So yeah, there was the revenue results and the increased retention, because this played into the overall retention strategy I had. It became a part of the retention strategy. I mentioned that in the surprise part, which we did great episodes in retention. I think they were back in I think it was episode 23 and 24.
Nice.
Yeah, over 100 episodes ago. But you and I think our best episodes of retention ever were that early, even though you mentioned you went back and listened to an old episode of ours and you were like, man, that's rough. But
there were some nuggets of wisdom in it.
Yeah. Just the production quality wasn't as good,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We the pod's gotten stronger over the apps.
Definitely has. Yeah. But anyway, so I think those are the two big business results that people could anticipate. And, again, anything you're doing that's increasing the happiness and satisfaction and results for your customers ultimately is a marketing move to kind of think about the Naval quote in reverse, so.
Yeah. I love that. One of the first things I do, one of my responsibilities, which might seem off to our listeners, but I love it, is I respond to all the Google reviews we get each week. And I woke up this morning to one from a mother of a 5-year-old who had just finished her songwriting camp at BMF. And it's like reading the parent's response to the product that you're delivering and the experience that they're getting is so powerful. It's like what you're talking about. It is the marketing work. I can literally swipe from that Google review for the landing page, because she, and I'm just saying, it's really powerful. So another little hot tip to our listeners is, as you're developing a product and you get your first 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 really happy customers, be sure to ask them why and bask in the glory of your efforts. This episode is sponsored by BigMusicGames.com. As our listeners know, Brooklyn Music Factory is all about a fun, fluency-first approach to music lessons. And at the foundation of our teaching methods are rhythm, melody, harmony, and songwriting games that challenge students as young as 4 years old to train their ears and flex that musical mind. Because when you set an intention of gamifying every single lesson, you're going to find improved attendance, increased play at home and higher student retention. So we've set up a website just for our listeners so you can start playing today. Go to bigmusicgames.com/7FMS and create your free account. Again, that's bigmusicgames.com/7FMS. And if you join today, I'm going to send you a personal invite to join our weekly teacher training call with me and Greggy Bizzle, our chief game designer. Go ahead and put play back into practice with Big Music Games. Okay, so let's just close, if you don't mind, Daniel, with some action steps that our listeners can take on this. I'm sure there's a bunch of them that have been taking notes, have been thinking like, man, I need to do a version of a book blast in my program. Like, what are 1 or 2 or 3 things a school owner can do right now to get started on developing this type of product and adding it to their suite?
I love this question, Nate. It's a good way to end the episode, I think. What can they do to get started? Well, not to put too fine a point on it, take my training, I guess. All is revealed there. If you want to do, if you hear this and you're like, oh man, I've been kicking around an idea like this in my own head for years. This is kind of confirming that I want to move forward on something like this. Then I would just say what you can do, build the simplest funnel of all time. Market this to your families first.
Yes.
Come up with a series of like 3 to 5 emails, announce it a couple months in advance of when you want to do it, and then send a few reminder emails, build an interest list, have people, quote unquote, sign up for it. That could be as easy as, hey, reply to this email and let me know. Or you could have them, fill out like a small little application form, things of that nature. Be prepared to sell it. Don't sell this weekly. Don't sell from your back foot. Don't sell apologetically. Actually sell it. Be prepared to answer questions and objections. Be aware that families will assume that their child will not want to do this because we're already struggling to get them to come to 1 hour a week. Why would they want to come to 8? Yes. If you're doing group, obviously. If you're doing private, this isn't something entirely different. And obviously, if you're doing private lessons, you're not already in a group lesson model. You're going to have to buy a bunch of instruments because, I did this for piano, but for people who've taken my multi-level group training, I've seen guitar studios do this. I've seen voice studios do this. I've seen violin studios do this. I've seen drum studios do this, where they're teaching a multi-level year-round and also doing book blast camps as well. So you will need actual instruments for all the kids to work on. Otherwise, this structure doesn't really make a lot of sense. Right. Other things you can do to prepare for it, create your structure of what you want it to run like. I'll very briefly, just give a high-level overview. I thought about this in terms of hours. For the first part of the hour, kids are working on something new. In the middle part of the hour, they are playing a game with me. At the end of the hour, they're polishing up and passing the song. That's the goal. And then on the hour, I give the kids like a 5-minute goof around social time / bathroom break. And then we get back into it. And then we do that. On days I did the 2.5 hour, I would maybe play slightly more games than I would if it was the 2 hour version. But I was very used to that because the original version of Piano Express was an 8-hour summer day camp that ran for a week. So having kids for 2.5 hours was nothing when right. Greg and I had developed a really robust structure to keep kids busy and engaged for 8 hours in a day, so including a lunch period. So yeah.
Can I repeat back just a few of the action steps I heard you say? Because I think one of the things you started with that was fascinating. You're like, the first thing you said was build a landing page, and I was like, okay, what I love about this is it's so simple. If you have an idea, then broadcast the idea. And
you
were like,
I did it all through email. I did it all through email. I didn't even have a landing page.
Right. You just did email copy and say, reply here if you're interested. The second really important tip, and honestly, we have a ton of schools that want to do a songwriting camp like Brooklyn Music Factory, and they want to see, 300-400 students come through. And again, back to your point, they expect that that'll happen in the first couple of years. And you're like, hold the phone. Like, start only with your families and go hand to hand with them. It's like hand to hand combat. Sell directly to those families, ask them to reply, and fill your first book blast just with those 8 families that are interested from within your internal list, right? You don't need to get fancy at all. And I love that you point that out, because I think a lot of our listeners maybe missed that initial step of just only marketing internally. And then the final piece, I love that you laid out a template. Honestly, Daniel, not surprised, but love how simple it is. You were like, new material, 20 minutes. Game, 20 minutes. Polish the material, 20 minutes. Bathroom break, 5 minutes. Rinse and repeat.
And yeah, it was more like 25, 10, 25, or maybe
25,
like
10, dig it.
23, 13, 22, something like that.
Well, so if you're listening, get your friggin' G-Doc open right now and write minute 1 to 23. What are you going to put there? Minute 23 to 33. Like, put in Big Music Games or whatever your favorite game is. Minute 33. You know what I mean? Like, don't wait. This is less than 10 minutes of your day to jot down in your G-Doc your initial outline of how you're going to do it. And then that can go into the email template. Love it. Daniel, that was super useful. I hope inspiring for our listeners, and I hope that they start adding additional revenue products to their suite.